Hey everyone, this is Daniel,
And I'm Jun,
and we are
Korean.
American.
Hey Daniel,
Hey June,
what's up?
it's almost the end of May.
It's almost the end of May. Yeah,
The year's almost halfway up.
yeah. Our audience would be surprised that some people think that we have a whole list of topics that we're going to talk about.
Uh-huh.
Most of the time, this is how it works, right? We
Yeah.
just meet on some day,
Yeah.
and then we're like, "What are we going to talk
What are you
about
going to
today?"
talk about?
Yeah. And then now we were starting to think that this doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So we finally, after 45 episodes,
Yeah, 46 now. Mm-hmm.
came up with sort of a structure,
Very light.
very light,
Structure, yes.
of what we're gonna cover. And one of it, like, there are like recurring topics that
Yes.
we wanted to
Yeah,
cover
yeah,
too,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
One of which is the recap news of the month.
Yes.
Yeah. And
So,
go ahead.
Yeah, so I think at least once a month, the plan is to recap some of the latest, let's say, news events or, trends in Korea for the previous month. And that'll just make it, at least one out of every 4 or so episodes can be this. But just like we said for the media review episode as well, the point is not necessarily informational. Like, we're not trying to educate the public or our listeners on what's going on. I really do want to still make sure the focus is on, okay, let's try to use these events or news stories as a way for us to dive into Korean culture and then, either compare it to American culture or get at least, my Korean American perspective on that. So, yeah.
Awesome. So,
June, what's been in the news in May?
yeah, so we picked 4 major issues.
Okay.
And we couldn't even pick more because I think that's it. I think there are 4 major issues and then a long tail, right? Should we go one by one, or should I talk about all 4 before I start? What do you think?
Yeah, let's go over all 4 and then we'll go one by one. Yeah.
So one out of the 4 I think we already covered as an episode, which was the Adore, Hybe, and Min Hee-jin episode. That issue was, I think, one of the biggest issues of May.
Yeah.
Was it May? Was it? I think it was May.
It
right?
broke at the very end of April, I believe.
Okay.
But it's still ongoing.
Yeah. That thing. And then there was the Line Naver Japan issue.
Okay.
We're going to get into that later. And then there was the cancel culture issue about this. So there are 2, how would I describe it? 2 people or groups got major canceled this week.
Yeah.
One was this guy called Kang Hyung-wook. He's very famous for being a dog trainer.
And we've mentioned him. We've referred to him in the Pedicate episode.
Yes, I
we
think
called
so.
him the dog president.
Yeah. Ketongyeong.
Ketongyeong.
Yeah. And then there's this comedian group called Pishik Dehak. They're very, very famous for their YouTube show called Pishik Show.
Yeah.
They had some very controversial episode released, and then they're on the verge of being canceled.
Okay.
Or are they already canceled? Maybe, I don't know. And then the final one was the ban of the so-called 직구, direct purchasing from the government. And that blew up the entire society for a couple days, but now the government backed off.
Okay.
Yeah. So those 4 episodes.
All right, let's do it.
Those 4 issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So I don't know how much we want to get into the Min Hee-jin because we already covered it, kind of.
Is there any updates to it, though?
There are some updates because they're going into trial now, and now Hybe is starting to release all the, I guess, evidence that wasn't revealed from her, and now it's coming into a different phase, and now it's very controversial.
Okay, that's the one thing I maybe thought would be interesting to discuss, which is after releasing that episode, for our audience, we don't do that much research beforehand.
Yes.
But I was reading various forums and getting different takes on it. And I did feel like, at least at the time, right, this was a couple weeks ago, there was a very clear and distinct, let's say, reaction that maybe Western K-pop fans had to this. compared to like Korean K-pop fans or Korean people in general, right? And so I thought that was interesting and might be worth discussing briefly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think again, this person Min Hee-jin being like the master of marketing, I think knows exactly how to move public sentiment.
Yeah.
And she did exactly that by like, I don't know, persuading more of the emotional side than the rational side.
Okay.
I want to say. And that's why I think there's a very split opinion between the domestic public and the international public.
Okay. Jun, let me bring a couple of, I guess, points that Western people seem to have about the Min Hee-jin issue and see if you can represent like the Korean rebuttal to it in a sense.
Yes.
So I think the very first one I read a lot about was, okay, I mean, Min Hee-jin is acting a bit like, you know, maybe a spoiled brat because she's a very famous person getting paid very, very well. And so who is she to complain about what her actual bosses are telling her when she's making whatever, like millions of dollars, right? Like, okay, boo-hoo, sorry to feel bad. It's hard to feel bad for you when we know that you're rich and famous. So that was the first point I think a lot of people were saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's logically must be true, right? But I think the way in which she framed, I think, and again, this is why I think she's genius in like moving the public, that during the press conference, she almost framed as if she's one of us. Yeah. And then she's fighting against like this huge conglomerate.
I see.
Like evil, huge conglomerate. But then if you actually look into it, right, she's getting, like, her salary is something that a normal person can't even start to imagine.
Yeah, she's like a 0.1 percenter, right? Like she's very, very rich.
I mean, but Korean people, like some Korean people might argue, but still the difference in like the wealth, I guess, or the amount of capital that they can move is tremendously different. Sure. But still, I think it's like just, I mean, she hired one of the most expensive law firms in Korea
to represent her. Yeah.
So that's not how a normal person can fight against a conglomerate, right? Yeah.
So you're saying even though she may, objectively be very well off in society and rich, even still in comparison to, the Hive mothership, she is in a sense like a David versus Goliath story.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, I was supposed to defend the Korean or like represent the Korean sentiment. Yeah. I think in Korean society where there are a lot of large conglomerates and there are a lot of like, let's say the public sentiment towards conglomerates are that they generally think that they're evil. Yeah. And so that sort of, contrast between a single person and a conglomerate, I think it's something that the Korean public can very easily buy into.
I see. Yeah. So let's repeat that. I think she really garnered a lot of, I think, sympathy and favor with the Korean population. Yeah. Because every single Korean person can relate to that feeling of like, oh, wow, there's this like rich, ultra powerful person in a position where I cannot even touch them. Yeah. And they're being taken advantage of by them, right? Yeah. Okay. The second point I heard a lot was, before I get into this, I should just say, any non-Korean paying attention to this case, they're going to be a hardcore K-pop fan, I think, right? Because why would anyone else care? Whereas in Korea, I think, even if you're a hardcore K-pop fan or not, this is just news that everyone is basically, talking about or hearing about, right? So we should say that too. There's like a heavy bias in the Western audience for K-pop, like, again, hardcore enthusiast fans. But, Jun, one of the things I think I saw most commonly brought up too is Min Hee-jin herself. I think they were saying, like, she just doesn't seem like a good person because she made some what they would call either ageist or misogynistic type comments about the talent. Again, I don't know all the details. And also, to be clear, most Western audiences are reading this through a translated version, right? Okay. So we're getting a translation. But it was a comment such as like, she's 23 now. She should have debuted when she was 20. She was much more beautiful as a 20-year-old, right? Like to a Western audience, they're like, that's like weird. The other thing is, why is she as like a middle, let's say, I don't know, a middle-aged woman treating these, teenagers and 20-year-olds as if they're like her friends or daughters? They're like, this is like a weird relationship, it seems like. yeah, it's almost like predatory.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the things too. It's like I think Western audiences see her as like this predatory, sexist, misogynistic person, and so again, it's harder to have sympathy for her.
I think there are 2 points here, right? The one being like the ageist issue. I think that's a bit foreign to me as a Korean because I see her as a professional
Yeah.
in the industry. And I think when she was saying that, it wasn't like, she wasn't trying to say anything in terms of like an ageist issue. Like that, like being 20 is more beautiful than 23. I think she was like purely approaching that in like a very, very professional point of view, as if like you're a coach of an athlete team, right?
Yeah.
Of course, you have better performance when you're 20 versus when you're 23, and there's a higher chance of succeeding if you're younger, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't sense any of like the ageist issue there. The second point in which like that's also very foreign to me.
Like almost an inappropriate work relationship between someone who's older and younger.
Yes. If anything, and I think I'm pretty aligned with the public sentiment of Koreans, is that she's very, like, I guess, ambitious and enthusiastic with her work.
Yeah.
Like, very, like, caring for the members. And I think it was even not inappropriate because she was channeling through their parents and not, like, directly to them.
Oh, interesting.
I think they have a very endearing relationship.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a inappropriate thing.
It's not like predatory.
That's very foreign.
Yeah, I think it's a very American concept or bias.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think Americans maybe are very sensitive, myself included.
Yeah.
Right? Anytime you see someone who's middle-aged or older interacting very closely with someone who's like a teenager or, you know, let's say very young 20s, you're always like, oh, it's like, are they taking advantage of them? Is it like, are they, I don't know how much you should say. Are they grooming them? Like, is this really an appropriate relationship to have?
But like, imagine that you're in like a college band and then you have a coach of the band and you're trying to like compete against a national whatever band competition. Yeah. That relationship, like, I mean, like the teacher-student relationship, it could be very endearing. Like the teacher can almost act as like a second parent. Yeah. I view it as something like that. Yeah. And not a predatory way.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I'd say I'm probably with you more. Yeah. But again, I can really understand why a Western listener, especially when they're reading a translation of what actually is being said, you know, all of the nuance and whatever gets dropped. Because I was reading one Korean person's response to these posts. And they're like, no, actually, if you listen to the Korean, she sounds very basically like protective. And it's almost like she's talking about her niece. Like it's not at all in like a bad way. Yeah. But if you read the comments, it's like, oh, she was prettier at 23 than 20. You can see why that sounds bad in a sense, right? Yeah. If you're making an analogy to, let's say, sports and a sports agent, that one really resonates with me, right? Like, who wouldn't want someone to go pro when they're 18 versus 23? Yeah. These are like the prime earning years, let's say. You have so much more potential, like upside, if you debut or start earlier, right? So like, yeah, that would be a huge difference, right? If the 3-4 years at that time is a big difference. Yeah. And so when you make that analogy, she's saying it's really in favor of the, in a sense, trying to protect and help her group. Yeah, that one resonates with me.
And if you look at the industry, you're lucky if you're in a girl band and then you last until your mid-20s.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And to continue the sports comparison too, I do think in the West we're much more careful about how we discuss women in particular, right? Whether what they look like, how old they are, etc. Yeah. And you know, no one would think twice about saying like for let's say a male athlete, like, oh, like 18, you know, they're prime, they're only good for 5 years, 7 years, right? Like once they're 30, their career is probably going to be over. Yeah. But if you say that about a woman, right, I think they're a lot more sensitive about that. And so I think that is definitely playing into this.
Yeah. I mean, I could understand why it's very sensitive. Yeah. But yeah, it is a very different point of view, I think. Yeah. Okay. Actually, so now that a lot of the evidence that HYBE has collected are rolling out in midst of the trial, I feel like I can't support her anymore.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Is there actually a trial going on right now?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. They released Kakao Talk messages from Minijin, like sort of like really bad mouthing the members.
Of the group?
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. That could turn public sentiment
Saying
against
like,
her.
oh, like she's like effing fat, whatever.
Okay. Yeah, that's not gonna look good for her.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, this whole thing is, K-pop in general is a very scary topic because I think the netizen culture globally feels very, very strongly about their positions and their groups and people they're fans of. So it's a good segue, I think, into the next topic.
Do you know any of K-pop? Do you have a favorite K-pop band?
Me?
Yeah.
No. I know so little about K-pop. Honestly, for me, aespa, New Jeans, they're all the same. Like I can't distinguish.
But I'm impressed that you even know them.
Well, those two are very famous.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're pretty much on the same level.
I couldn't name more than that, I think. All right, let's move on.
The next one that we wanted to cover was, let's do the Line issue.
Okay.
So for the audience who doesn't know what Line is a very famous messenger app that's predominantly serviced in Japan and some other countries in East Asia like Thailand, Taiwan, and a little bit of Indonesia, I think. They're huge. Surprisingly, they were created by a Korean tech company called Naver. Naver is the biggest tech company in Korea, and it would be the equivalent of Google.
They own web
Korea.
search.
Yeah, they own search in Korea. So we call it the web portal or the search portal. So Line was a product from Naver. They created a subsidiary called Naver Japan back in, I want to say late 2000s, like 2009, 2010. They're like trying many different products to launch in Japan and see if they're any going to be successful. And I think that was a time when like WhatsApp and all these messenger services were starting to pop up here and there in the very early days of mobile, right? And then they created a messenger service and it became like the dominating messenger service of Japan.
Yeah.
And so for a long time, it was operated by Naver. But then they created a separate legal entity called Line. And they placed the headquarters in Japan.
Okay. The key takeaway is, though, that, the most dominant, basically, messaging service in Japan is this product called Line that is still owned by a Korean company, Naver. I think there's one other maybe important point. I don't know if you know, but where are the servers and actually the data for Line being stored? Is it in Japan locally or is it in Korea?
I think it was in this. I have to fact check. Either in Korea or parts of it was in Korea and then parts of it was in China.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
This I'm not sure.
Sure. But yeah that's interesting. And I think some other relevant context to bring up, it's like for a while, why didn't Google work in Korea? It's because Korea had this requirement. Basically, all your map data and GPS data or whatever, the Google Maps servers, I think, have to be in Korea. And Google is like, we're not going to do that. Right? So it's a similar case here where I think Japan is saying, hey, Line, if you want to operate in Japan, like everything needs to be locally in Japan, is my understanding. Yeah.
And then, so I also have to explain Yahoo Japan to explain this.
Okay.
So there's a big like search portal that's operated in Japan, which is sort of like the Naver of Japan, which is Yahoo Japan. And I know that Yahoo sort of died off in the rest of the world, but only was successful and still successful in Japan. So for a long time, Line really wanted to make something like Yahoo. I know that there was a phase where they kept on trying to put the search function in Line. And I think Yahoo really wanted a messenger service.
I see.
Right? So I think some years ago, they decided to merge. But the way in which they merged is that they created a merger company called Line Yahoo.
Okay.
And which is owned by a holdings company called A Holdings. And A Holding is 50% of A Holding is owned by SoftBank, which used to own Yahoo Japan. And then the other 50% is owned by Naver. So it's
Okay,
50-50.
got it. Okay.
So, and then now I think in 2023, there was this huge data leakage incident that happened.
Yeah.
And that like was one of the biggest news in Japan. And so the Japanese government started investigating the data leakage and found out that a lot of this data was operated by Naver.
Mm.
And so they sent out a letter to A Holdings, both SoftBank and Naver, saying that Naver should sell some of their shares to SoftBank so that SoftBank has more than 50% of A Holdings so that they have more governance.
Yeah.
They meaning SoftBank.
Yeah.
Or Japan has more governance towards the data that's
Makes sense.
stored through line.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if this happened back in 2023, why is this coming up in the news now?
It was a huge scandal, but now maybe the
know.
data leakage happened in 2023.
And then the letter came
government,
recently. I think that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, and I think people are associating this with the push in AI that the Japanese government is trying to push about like the data that is needed for the
Training AI
the
models
AI
and
model
things.
to be trained.
Mm.
And so for them to do that, Japan has to have more governance towards the data.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, I'm very sympathetic to the Japanese government.
Mm-hmm.
My very initial response is there's a very parallel case that's been going on in the US around TikTok and ByteDance.
Yeah.
Right? Where the US government is heavily pushing, and I think they actually now passed a law basically requiring ByteDance, the parent company owning TikTok, to basically sell ownership of TikTok to a US owned subsidiary. So like basically TikTok is now owned and operated by a US entity, separate than ByteDance, which is, a Chinese owned company. And they basically said, if you don't sell, we're going to outright ban TikTok in the US.
Yeah.
And we have like, I think they gave them like a 1 year, figure it out in 1 year. So yeah, in a sense, I can understand that. But there are a couple points I wanted to bring up as well. One, there is no equivalent of Line in America, right? I mean, of course, iMessage is, I think, one of the most used messaging services. And then maybe, there's Facebook Messenger and a long tail of others. But the idea of like the messaging app and also that being the everything app is just not a concept in the US. Whereas in Asia, right, Kakao in Korea, WeChat in China, Line in Japan, right? These one apps do everything, right, June? Through the messaging app, you can not only send chats and videos and photos like every messaging app, there's also features to send and receive money, to do shopping, e-commerce, right? Just the list goes on and on and on of what these messaging apps do. And so I think that's also relevant context, which is like, hey, if you're Japan, your citizens are 100% using Line for all these things. And yet Line itself is being, let's say, owned and operated 50% by a Korean company. A lot of the people building this product for your, citizens are Koreans living in Korea. Right? I can understand why Japan would want something like this.
But do you think it's fair?
Fair is a very interesting question. I think I'll bring up what the US government is doing to ByteDance and TikTok. That one does feel fair to me. The reason being, I really believe in kind of reciprocity. So as we know, China has the Great Firewall. No US products work in China. China blocks them. And so why should the US, let's say, allow Chinese products to work in America, right? Well, let us operate in your country and we'll let you operate in ours. So in a sense, that one makes sense to me. That's not an apt comparison here, though, because there's no, it's not like Korea's blocking Yahoo Japan from working in Korea, for example. Maybe if they were saying like, allow Yahoo Japan to go work in Korea, then we'll allow Line to continue working in Japan. So I don't think reciprocity makes sense here. I think another analogy might be something like if Japan's using like a US product, let's say, I don't know what it might be, but let's just say Amazon, right? And one day the Japanese government's like, hey, by the way, US, like we don't like the fact that like all our citizens are using Amazon, right? You have to sell Amazon, let's say, to a Japanese entity, right? Exactly what the US is doing to TikTok. It certainly feels unfair, right? So I think I can see both sides here. But yeah, I guess first off, why is this news and what is the Korean sentiment, let's say, about this?
It's news because, and this is something that I resonate with, because I think it's unfair for the government to say, because I think it's very odd for the government to direct something for how the shares should be allocated. I think it's very weird. I don't know. It's like, I mean, Instagram is very popular in Korea.
Yeah.
And what if like Instagram, I mean, this is never going to happen, but like tells the American government saying like, you're so popular here in Korea and all the social networking is happening in Instagram.
Yeah.
You should sell the shares of Instagram and we should own Instagram now, sort of.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think like nationalism comes into play here, right? As an American, when I hear that, it's like, yeah, that's not fair. Like,
Yeah.
what? But as a Korean, I can understand why the government would want to do something like that and think that way. Like, I understand.
As a Korean.
Yeah, like if I were the Korean government, I wouldn't love the fact that like all of my population is using like this American product, doing all this, let's say, shopping or maybe all these things through an American product. I have no control over it and I don't get any piece of it, right? But okay, how do you feel as a Korean then about the Google Maps thing that I brought up earlier, where Google Maps was not allowed Korean government basically gave a set of requirements to Google to operate Google Maps in Korea, and Google Maps said like, we're not going to do that. But like as a Korean user, you might have lost out, right? Because globally, Google Maps is considered the best map product, right? And a lot of foreigners, when they come here, they're like, why doesn't Google Maps work for me in Korea? It's very inconvenient. But, in the sense the government's trying to protect you, I think, as a user, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, do you see the analogy? Like the Korean government gave a very similar set of requirements to an American company trying to operate in Korea. And I do think the government, they're allowed to do that, right? They're trying to do what's best for the country and for their citizens. So does it seem similar to you as to what Japan's doing with, let's say data ownership over, line?
I'm trying to think. I think like Google Maps is a better analogy than TikTok. Because the Korean government has banned or is still banning giving out data, geographical data to Google Maps, because geographical data is very important for the Korean government because we're at a state of war. But it's also very odd because they gave out all of that to like Korean companies.
Two
like
Korean
Naver.
companies, right? The dominant maps here are what, Naver and Kakao Maps.
Yeah, which they have more control over, right? So I think that makes sense. Yeah, if Google Maps were to be very actively servicing in Korea and maybe the Korean government wants Google Maps to sell their shares to the Korean government, that makes sense. Yeah.
I do think that's one key difference here. Like Line's been operating in Japan for a very long time, right?
Yeah.
And now they're saying, well, because of this data breach, I don't know, now you have to do this or get out. That's, I do think, a little different than saying up front, hey, you can't operate here until you do XYZ.
Yeah.
And versus like letting them in and then changing the requirements in a sense later on. So
yeah.
But yeah, I respect the Japanese government for taking data leaks very seriously.
Yeah.
But at the same time, yeah, I can definitely see why that feels unfair to Koreans. Yeah. I do have to bring up though, Jun, like even in the US like government versus ByteDance and TikTok thing, I think nationality is playing a part here.
Yes.
Right? Like US and China, I think it's no secret. They're seen as the two biggest superpowers in the world and they're constantly competing, right? And fighting each other in a sense.
Yes.
And so this is the US government using that against TikTok. It's like, oh, you're like backed by China, right? There's all these claims of TikTok is spyware, right? Like you're mining data. The Chinese government could use their influence over TikTok to skew the election, right? There's all sorts of these claims. And I think whether they're true or not, the US government is definitely able to play into that to basically, turn public sentiment against TikTok, ByteDance, etc.
Yeah.
Japan and Korea obviously have a lot of history. How do you think that's playing into this Line Japan issue?
So this is what I heard in a geopolitical point of view. It's only advantageous for the Japanese government to maintain a not so friendly relationship with Korea in relation to their relationship with the US, is what I heard.
Say that again, yeah.
So this is not what I think.
Okay.
This is what I heard.
Understood.
Yeah. It's only advantageous for the Japanese government to maintain a not so friendly relationship with Korea to eventually gain dominance in the East Asian realm.
Okay. So in a sense, like, let's say Japan and Korea are children fighting for more, let's say, favor from America, let's say, who's acting like a parent type thing.
Exactly.
I see. Sibling rivalry.
So when the time comes where US has to choose one over the other, I think it's very highly possible that they choose Japan over Korea.
Yeah.
And so for Japan to take advantage of that, they have to maintain a not so great relationship with Korea. And that's, if you think about it in a geopolitical way, I think you can interpret the line issue in that way.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I had never heard this before. This is really interesting to me because, again, with the more US mindset, the way I think about both Japan and Korea, it's like we all need to be allied against China. Right?
Yeah.
So in a sense, like, I agree, as an American government, I want to have very strong relationships independently with both Japan and Korea. But it's probably also in my favor for them to be close to each other too, so that we can all be more unified when it comes to basically balancing against China's rise, right? So.
Yeah. But yeah, in Japan's point of view, there has to be if there's a situation where the U.S. government has to choose one or the other. Yeah, they have to be the one who has to be chosen.
Interesting. Yeah. I've never heard this before, but I can kind of understand that.
Yeah.
It does feel a little bit, what's the right word? Short-sighted is what first comes to mind. And that, like, Japan and Korea should just get over themselves. Because, like, the fight is not whether, like, which one of us is more important to America. The fight is over, like, well, we need America on our side to protect against China. And also, like, we need each other to be unified against that too. Anyway, we're not a political podcast by any means.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So this topic is a great segue to move on to the next topic, which is the so-called 직구 issue.
Okay.
So 직구 is short for 직접 구매, translated to directly purchasing. And this is something where usually Korean people buy things off directly from a foreign market personally and import it, like, personally for them to use, as opposed to something that's officially imported by going through the process of getting approval from the government and getting imported, right?
Yeah.
I think a good example would be maybe an iPhone, right?
Yeah.
Like, for a long time after their initial release, iPhone wasn't released officially in Korea. So some people bought it off, like, personally from the US and brought it in and used it, right? And so for a lot of items, not only for electronics, people do that a lot, like maybe say like clothes or cosmetics or, children's toys or whatnot. And recently the government announced a ban of all of this, like, altogether.
Wait, they banned all direct purchases from foreign sites?
Kind of, but indirectly. What they're saying is that they have a thing called a KC mark, which is something that they give a mark to a product called a KC mark, saying that we approve this and this is safe for the Korean market to consume.
Got it.
Right. So if you try to, of course, if you try to officially import something into Korea, you have to get the KC mark.
Yes.
And what they said is that you can't purchase things that doesn't have a KC mark.
Oh.
Yeah.
So this was basically, now, as a citizen, it would have been illegal for me to go buy something directly from, like, a foreign website or whatever service without the KC mark.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, of course, a product can choose to get the KC mark even if they're not, like, officially exporting it to Korea.
Sure, yeah.
Who would do that? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was the issue, and there was such a backlash.
I mean, this is, like, I didn't realize this was what was happening because I saw some of the headlines too. This is very anti-consumer. Like, me as an individual, this is really bad for me in Korea, right? Because, theoretically, it limits what I can buy.
Yeah.
I'm also probably buying things outside of Korea because it's cheaper or not available domestically, right?
Yeah.
So this is really unfavorable. It's no surprise to me that this is, terribly unpopular with Korean population.
On the surface, the reason that the government said that they're doing this, which I think to some extent makes sense, is because there were things that were especially like imported from, let's say, China
Uh-huh.
that had like really toxic materials in, especially for maybe if it's something that's primarily used for children.
Sure, yeah.
There has been instances where these became a problem,
Mm-hmm.
but like banning everything altogether was too extreme.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Mm. Okay, where do I start? My very initial response is I wanted to talk a bit about customs and importing stuff in general. As an American, June, I have never ever had to think about this.
Yeah.
Like I can buy anything from anywhere
That's
at
the
any time
privilege
without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And to your point, I think this is because the US market is so lucrative.
Yeah,
Everyone's trying to export into America.
exactly.
And so they're willing to do whatever it takes,
Mhm.
check off whatever requirements, pay whatever import taxes are due,
Yeah.
just to be able to sell and market to Americans,
Mhm.
right? So I've never had to think about this before.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a very privileged point of view. And so still up to this day, there are a lot of things that are very popular outside of Korea that they don't sell in Korea. And the only way to like experience that and use that is to 직구, direct purchase.
I see. Okay, the second thing that comes to mind is, when we moved here, they kept asking for something like a import, what was it? Customs number.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what's your customs number?
Mhm.
First of all, June, do you have a customs number?
Yes,
Is it-
everyone has a customs number.
Is it like tied to your social security
I don't want to
number?
say everyone, but who's like actively
Wow.
like who has ever like once purchased something directly from overseas.
So you have to go to some Korean website, give
Uh-huh.
your like equivalent of your social security number,
Uh-huh.
and they give you like a customs import number. Okay.
Exactly.
Wow, as an American, like this was such a foreign concept.
Mhm.
We're like, what the heck is this?
Mhm.
And so like even the process of getting one, to be clear, wasn't that hard.
Mhm.
But like every time you have to order something
Mhm.
online, it's like, what's your customs number?
Mhm.
It's held at customs,
Yeah.
right? When we had something shipped, for example, from the US when we moved here,
Mhm.
it was held at customs
Yeah.
at the port
Yeah.
until we had this customs number,
Mhm.
and then it could finally get delivered to us.
Yeah.
But yeah, just something like, it felt like such a big inconvenience.
Mhm.
To your point, it just goes to show like what privilege Americans have,
Mhm.
never even having to think about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the 직구 market in Korea is so huge that I researched and found out that in 2022 alone, the market size of 직구 in Korea was up to $5 billion.
Yeah, it's big.
And so there are a lot of businesses around 직구 too. And I think I've told you before, but there's this concept called 배대지, short for 배송 대행지.
Uh-huh.
It's sort of like delivery delegation service.
Yeah.
Right. So what they do is that they create like these huge warehouses all over the US. And if the service doesn't officially ship that product to Korea, what they would do is that they would ship it to the warehouse where they have sort of like a PO box system.
Okay.
Where they can ship it to your PO box address to the warehouse, and the warehouse would send it over to you in Korea.
Oh, so it's legal to import? Like, do they have to pay all the import tax and everything?
Yeah, you have to. You're paying all the import tax.
Oh, okay.
But it's only solving the issue if the product doesn't officially ship it to Korea.
Oh, I see. So I go to some like whatever e-commerce site in America.
Yeah.
It says, "Oh, we don't ship to Korea." But instead, you can hire this service. They'll ship it to their warehouse in America.
Yes.
And they'll handle getting it to you, but through legit means, right? Like they'll pay the customs. You have to give an import number.
Yeah, it's not a sketchy thing.
Okay. Got it. It's just a service. Okay.
Yeah. So I always get my iPhone that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, definitely Apple products is the first thing I think of.
Yeah.
That is either cheaper or more accessible in America than Korea. So yeah, when we're back, we also buy whatever.
Yeah.
But we kind of like bring it in our carry-on, like to avoid the customs tax or whatever. So.
Oh yeah. To be clear, the only reason that I buy iPhones in the US, and for sure they sell iPhones here in Korea too.
Yeah.
It's not primarily because they're cheaper. It's because of the camera shutter sound.
Yeah. American iPhones don't make shutter sounds.
Yeah, for the non-Korean
do.
listeners, you would be surprised that in Korea, by law, you cannot silence the camera shutter sounds.
This is
in
the
phones.
most annoying thing ever. It's so annoying.
Yeah. It's because the so-called 몰카 issue.
Spy cam.
Spy
Yeah,
cam
yeah, yeah.
is such a big issue in Korea. Yeah.
It really is the most annoying thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I shouldn't say spy cams is annoying. But June, sometimes I'm like,
Well, banning it that way is annoying.
but sometimes I take out my phone. Let's say my kid's sleeping and they're super cute.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, if I take a picture, it's going to make that really loud shutter sound. It might wake them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that shutter sound is super annoying.
Yeah. And sometimes I want to like take a picture of something and I'm not necessarily trying to take a picture of someone else.
Yeah.
Right. But then like I make this huge sound.
I know. Yeah. It's obnoxious.
And it makes me so like, I have to pretend that, I wasn't
taking it of you. Yeah. Okay. Another thing that comes to mind when hearing this, June, Amazon recently, there is the Amazon of Korea, Coupang. But Amazon, I think in late April, first announced, we're offering free delivery to Korea. So I think they're trying to enter the Korean market in a meaningful way. First of all, that's crazy, right? Free shipping to Korea.
Yeah.
But I only found out about it recently. I wonder if that is at all in connection to this issue.
It could be. But I think if anything, they're targeting more towards the recent Chinese services like Temu
I see.
and AliExpress.
Okay. Yeah. Which was the next point I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
June, Temu. I don't know what's happening, if this is happening in the US too. But holy cow, every advertisement I see on YouTube, on any website, anywhere in Korea, is Temu.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, so maybe you could talk a little bit about Temu. I don't know too much. I just know I think they're like a Chinese
e-commerce
platform, but like every ad I see is from Temu.
I think they're very aggressively trying to expand outside of China, right? And they're very successful in the US, I heard.
Are they? Okay, not surprising. Yeah. Are they just like AliExpress?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
AliExpress is one of the Chinese conglomerates, like e-commerce products, and then I think Temu is another one of the Chinese conglomerates competitors. Okay.
As far as I understand, AliExpress is their like spin-off app that works like overseas, where Alibaba is the domestic one.
Okay. And then Temu is owned by another one, I believe. Some other big Chinese conglomerate tech company.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I guess listeners outside of Korea too, let us know too. Is Temu just like very aggressively advertising everywhere? Because that's all I see. Yeah, it's crazy.
Have you ever used Temu before?
I have not yet. I'm very tempted to. Yeah.
I think I've purchased an item before on Temu.
Yeah.
But it is insane how cheap these things are.
Yeah, I agree.
So there are things that like you want to buy something of better quality, and and there are things that you just need it. Yeah. Like you just have to have it, like, even if it's very cheap, right?
Yeah.
And those types of products, it's very good to buy off of Temu. And I don't know, like, I can't even understand how it operates, because it's like things are like 1,000won.
June, I feel the same way about a lot of things in this like global economy. Sometimes I even think about like, I don't like an egg. Like this egg was made by some chicken at some farm and then shipped all the way like through like 3 trucks to this like, grocery store or delivered straight to my front door. Yeah. And it costs like 10 cents. Like, how can this be? Yeah. Anyway, scale economy. But yeah, I agree. Temu stuff is crazy cheap, and that's what's tempting. I even saw like a free drone. Like, just sign up. We'll send you a free drone.
And we'll spy on you.
Oh, man. Okay.
Anyways.
Let me think. Anything else related to this import thing? So is it still banned, basically, any direct purchase? Or I think you said it got reversed?
There was a huge backlash from the public, and I think the government backed off. But I don't know if their position is that, like, we're gonna pretend that nothing happened, or we're gonna come up with a better plan.
Okay. Yeah. But for now, as far as you know, this was basically canceled.
Yeah, at least postponed.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm still able to buy directly from other things.
Yeah.
Another thing that's interesting to me here is, I guess they're going after consumers, it seems. Like they made it, me as someone, a resident in Korea, they made it illegal for me to purchase directly. Right. And I think usually the strategy that's, more effective and works would be going after the sellers. if they found out I did buy something as a Korean resident directly, what are they going to do? Fine me, jail me? It doesn't make sense. But they can go after, right, these, whatever, the biggest people who are selling directly to Korea illegally, let's say. They can make that illegal, I think. And that's a more effective way. Is that strange to you that the Korean government would maybe come after end consumers rather than going after the businesses and distribution centers that are trying to sell to Koreans directly?
My interpretation of that is it's not a philosophical thing or a method thing. It's just because they're trying to target a global platform that is non-Korean. Like the Korean government wouldn't have power over, let's say, Temu to do something, right?
Interesting.
Then it's going to be a dispute between Korea and China, and then like I don't think Korea has a lot of leverage.
I see.
And the only reason that you think that way is because you're
American
from the US.
thinking.
Yeah. I mean, Korean government would definitely do that to Korean companies, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't target the consumers. They would target the company to do something.
Yeah.
But they don't have power to do that over a Chinese product or an American product.
American privilege. Yes, you're saying even if the Korean government was like, hey, Temu,
yeah.
you are now not allowed to sell directly to Korea. Go through our official, channels or whatever. Or, get our KC approval for every product you sell.
Yeah.
They would be like, that's cute.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Again, I do think if America were to say the same thing to Temu, at least before, maybe not now, who knows, but they would have to be like, okay, we're willing to do whatever it takes so that we can properly sell direct to American consumers. Okay. Interesting. All right.
Okay.
Final one.
So there are recently 2 back-to-back instances of like these very famous celebrities or like celebrity groups being canceled or on the verge of being canceled. And I don't know if you want to expand this out to cancel culture in general, because number one, maybe if we want to tackle this, we'll want to tackle this on a separate episode. Number 2, maybe it's too sensitive right now.
We'll get canceled.
Yeah. So yeah, I explained a little bit in the beginning of the episode, but so there were 2 instances. The first one came from 피식대학.
Yeah.
Which is, they're very huge, I think, internet like YouTube celebrities almost.
Yeah.
They are a group of comedians who created a YouTube channel, and they have many different shows within the channel, and one of which many became very famous, but the most successful one was a recent one called 피식 Show, where I think the American audience would find this hilarious, but they're trying to make fun of an American talk show. So
like Conan O'Brien or whatever. Yeah.
Because that's very, I think, distinctive to a Korean audience. Like, I mean, American audience would think like why wouldn't they do talk shows that way?
Yeah, Jay Leno. I mean, there's so many, right?
Yeah. But if you think about it, it's a very explicitly American format. So they're trying to like do a parody and sort of like make fun of it. And the 3 of them, they have different levels of English.
Yeah.
In a spectrum.
Yeah.
So one speaks pretty good English, and one is like your average Korean, and one I feel like has 0 English levels. But they pretend to speak in English.
Yeah.
They actually do speak in English. So they have like one or like couple guests for every episode. And for some reason they blew up, right? And now like they became so popular that like even American celebrities were on the show. Like forgot his name. His name Chris Pratt.
Oh, Chris Pratt, yeah. He's huge. Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh yeah, he was on Pichik Show.
He's big.
Yeah, and like all of these like very, very like A-list celebrities were on it. They speak like broken English, but they And then the one guy who doesn't speak English at all, he just like up front just doesn't speak English and speaks Korean, even to like Chris Pratt
directly. Yeah.
But anyways, and then they had a spin-off or another show within the 피식대학 channel that I don't know exactly the name of the show. I think it's called 경상도 호소인. I think they spun off from like an incident that came from the 피식 Show.
Okay.
Because one of the guys is from 경상도, the region that I came from. So he's like, when he's like trying to be like express his 경상도-ness or whatever.
Yeah.
One other guy keeps on trying to say that he's from 경상도 too. But he's not.
He's not.
And the nuance is that I think Gyeongsangdo people are seen as more manly and masculine.
Oh, okay.
And so this other guy keeps trying to like
Pretend to be.
I'm Gyeongsangdo too,
Yeah.
and
I'm
like,
manly like you.
and there's like this very distinctive Gyeongsangdo accent, and that Seoul guy tries to like mimic
the accent.
Gyeongsangdo accent, but it's so wrong.
Okay.
And that was like kind of like a funny moment in Pishik show,
Yeah.
and they thought it was funny, so they like went all in and then made a spin-off separate show out of that where the three of them travel to different areas of Gyeongsangdo.
And try to pass for locals. Is that what they're trying to do, or
I don't know exactly what they're trying
just
to do.
explore as a group? Gyeongsangdo.
And that one Seoul guy keeps on trying to say like, oh, like this is I know this place, and trying to like speak in like the broken Gyeongsangdo accent.
Mm-hmm.
And so they went to this very small city called Yeongyang, and yeah, to be clear, I've never heard of this.
Okay, it's
city
that small.
Either. It's that small. But then like they were trying to be funny. The fact that it's such a small town and such like there's nothing to do here, but then like they slightly went like crossed the line a little bit, trying like almost like trying to trash the local businesses and whatnot.
Yeah,
I think it was borderline inappropriate, and so there was a huge criticism towards that. And yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it's to the point where they can't
continue to
they
operate.
can't continue it anymore. But like there'll have to be a period where in Korea there's a term called 자숙 기간.
Okay, what's that mean?
A period of self correction.
Oh, like okay. Like their equivalent might be, I don't know, they're checking themselves into rehab.
Yeah,
okay.
Kind of. So they're going
doing
through
penance.
That. I don't
they're
think
paying penance.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think they're going to be canceled altogether.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the dog president, and then I'll respond to both?
Yeah, the dog president incident is that there's this guy called Kang Hyung-wook, and he got very famous from this show called 세상에 나쁜 개는 없다, translated to There Are No Bad Dogs in the World, where he goes around these households where the dogs are very problematic, and he like trains them in a proper way and corrects their behavior. And it became very popular because again, if you listen to our pet episode, the pet industry or the pet owners are very rapidly increasing in Korea. So he became very famous. But then very recently in this platform, job platform called Job Planet, which is the equivalent of Glassdoor in America.
Basically like anonymous employee reviews of their employer, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There has been several reviews. I don't know if they're recent or someone just found out of his company that he operates, of like these like horrible experiences that they had in the workplace. So I don't know. I think it's still unraveling. There's now like for some time up until now, it was like all criticism. But then now, like, there's some like past ex-employees like trying to defend him also.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Jun, what's the term for workplace abuse? Is it 갑질?
갑질.
Okay. Is that the accusation here, basically? Like,
yeah,
they're like really abusive verbally towards their employees.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's sort of like a family-owned business. Him and his wife, and I think there were a lot of criticism towards his wife too.
I think the important thing here is his whole, what's the right word, public persona is that he's like, again, the most caring, compassionate person, right? Like he's just super good with animals, right? Yeah. And then the allegation is that like he's actually a rotten human being because he's horrible to his employees, right?
Exactly.
Okay. There was, by the way, before I respond, I think there was another one too of like some K-pop star who had allegations of being a huge bully in high school. No?
That happens all the time. So many. Yeah.
Okay. But I think the biggest theme that ties all of these together is that Koreans expect from their celebrities, let's say, a very, again, super squeaky clean image. And anytime something comes up that surfaces, okay, actually like what they're pretending to be is not who they actually really are, it's a huge issue.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's the common theme here. It's like similar to when we talked about the, what is it, Extreme Decision episode, when Lee Sung-kyun ended his own life, right? Folding in a sense this like public pressure, and he was seen as like this really nice, caring, perfect person, but like maybe had some other allegations thrown his way.
Yeah.
Similar to that, I think public sentiment weighs so heavily, especially with regards to like your character. And if you present yourself as someone who's very, very, let's say, good and wholesome, but actually aren't that way in real life, right? Your whole career could be ruined in a sense. Does that resonate with you?
It does resonate with me, but I personally don't think that's the core cause.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
All of this, I think, personally relates to, I think I talked about this in our previous episode about jealousy. And, you know, like 사촌이 땅을 사면 배가 아프다.
Yeah.
Your stomach hurts if your cousin buys land.
Yeah.
It's because, and again, it relates back to relationism and how everyone started from scratch altogether. And if someone becomes more successful, I think there's a more stronger sense of jealousy in Korea. And so whenever you see someone who's so successful, I think there's a lot of jealousy that underlies the fandom all the time.
Interesting.
And if there's ever a sense of something that you, oh, maybe this person is not as good as they pretend to be, they don't just criticize them to the amount of their fault. They want them to
bring them down to their level.
Burn to hell.
I see.
Yeah, bring them down. I think that's the momentum, right?
Yeah.
I mean, definitely the thing that you said plays into factor.
Okay.
But you see like these instances where like for instance, Pishik show. I don't think that's a very big thing, right? That, I mean, sure, they like criticize like this small town, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But they're comedians. They can do that. And I mean, it's worth criticizing, but not to this level. But what the public wants to see is they even see, I think they feel entertainment towards seeing someone who was so up on the pedestal and then fall so dramatically.
Okay. The reason that doesn't immediately resonate with me then is why are Koreans so quick to put people on that pedestal to begin with if they're a jealous society by nature? Right? It's like, wouldn't they be resistant or hesitant to elevate anybody because they don't want anyone to become more successful than they are?
That's very interesting.
I don't know. Yeah, just thinking through.
Okay. I think it also relates to how homogenous the society is. If someone is likable, then everyone thinks the same way.
Yeah.
So I think there's also a momentum of someone being like upholstered to the pedestal too.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah. So just a little bit of success can snowball very quickly.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying. And then it's now common belief to put them on a pedestal so everyone will. Yeah. But I would say, if anything, like my impression is that's what's playing a role here. Is like even the slightest fault gets magnified in a similar way. But it's, I don't know. I don't see the jealousy aspect to it.
I mean,
it all plays a role, maybe. Yeah.
But I think there's what I see is that every time this happens, what the public wants to see is like the extreme like end.
I see.
Yeah.
That I agree with. I think Koreans can be, especially netizens, very vicious, right? And yeah, really, what's the right word? I was gonna say basically like poorly intentioned or maladjusted. I'm forgetting all my English euphemisms, but yeah, they just want to see the world burn, right? In a sense. Yeah, tear people down.
The reason why I feel also that this was related to jealousy is because if you see like maybe the comments on the internet for, let's say, a very beautiful actress, right? It's always more critical than, let's say, someone who looks like they have a lot of flaws.
I see. Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Two things that come up, Jun, about this I wanted to talk about earlier. One was regarding the PSIC canceling specifically. Do you think they were actually trying to be funny and cross that line into not being funny? Which, by the way, side note, like this is something I tell my son all the time. it's funny until it's not funny, and you need to understand what that boundary is, right?
Mhm,
Whether
mhm.
it's like pranking someone or like pantsing someone or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It can be funny, and then it's really inappropriate after
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
So is that what you think happened? And they were trying to be funny and just didn't gauge the line well?
Mm-hmm.
Because my, I guess, response was like, no, actually, it was like more of a hot mic situation
Mm-hmm.
where they showed their true persona, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out to be pretty nasty
Mm-hmm.
rather than like what they present on camera, which is very like funny and whatever. So do
Mm.
you think do you think this was actually an incident where they tried to be funny but failed, or it was just revealing their true nature?
I think they're all related, right? Like their true nature is like the people who are always trying to be funny.
Okay, I
Because
guess
it wasn't a live broadcast or anything. Like they edited it and they thought it was funny.
Oh, is
Yeah.
that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is what I'm trying to get at. I think for me, intention very much matters.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're trying to be funny, okay, they just failed. I can forgive that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Versus like, okay, like they always present as like this very affable, friendly, funny, whatever, humorous group,
Mhm.
but deep down they're actually like whatever, super narcissistic, super judgmental, very
Yeah.
mean-spirited.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to support them in that case.
Mm-hmm.
But you think it was actually like they thought this was funny and just failed?
But that was sort of their persona as comedians to begin with.
They
anyways.
pushed the boundary.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what they're known for. They're known to just always push the boundaries.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just took it too far.
Mm.
All right. I think the other thing I wanted to bring up, though, this ties together a couple themes as well,
Mm-hmm.
is as a Westerner, at least, I, consume all of my Korean news through English translations.
Mm-hmm.
So how, someone who I think understands the nuances pretty well of both English and Korean, do you think that is playing a big role here? For example, when I was reading the English translations of the PSIC news,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I thought was happening, more of a hot mic situation. Like,
Mhm.
oh, wow, these guys are like really mean and said all these super offensive stuff that, they must have known would be offensive.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly with the like whole Min Hee-jin, right? That stuff, right? I'm reading an interpretation that when I read it in English sounds really bad.
Mm-hmm.
When I talk to like Koreans or read Korean commentators' responses to it in Korean, it's like, oh, that's actually not what was being said.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just like misinterpreting it due to the translation. Yeah.
So I think number one, all languages are somewhat nuanced. And even if when English is translated into Korean, I think like a substantial part of it is lost in translation, right? But I think in like Korean, like language and culture are more nuanced because it's very homogenous. Like the US where it's like very multicultural, I think it's more official than nuanced because you have to understand each other better.
I get it. Yeah.
But in Korea, like because everyone's like pretty much the same, it's very nuanced. And that's why I think even more things get lost in translation.
That makes sense. Yeah, there's less established rules of like how Korean is to be interpreted.
Yeah.
Because everyone just understands it inherently.
Yeah.
Whereas in English, we're used to maybe talking to people where English is a second language.
Yes.
Or we're used to people like, having to interpret this on their own. And so I think there's more clearer understanding of maybe some of the subtext or implications of a phrase.
Yeah. I think the
That makes sense to
culture,
me.
by nature has to be a little bit more explicit than nuanced.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right. I think we got to a lot of really interesting points in this.
Yeah, surprisingly,
Why surprising, Jun? I think this...
I don't know. I think you brought a lot of good insights from an American point of view. Like news is news, like we can talk about it. But I think you framed it very well.
I see.
Yeah.
Maybe you thought the news headlines were kind of bland. But again, getting to the subtext of like what cultural differences is highlighting, I think is good.
Yeah.
Okay. For the audience, please let us know how you feel about these episodes because we do plan to do them regularly.
Yes.
Once a month, we plan to recap the previous month's news headlines and basically dissect them from a cultural perspective. All right. So, Jun, we have another Patreon subscriber this past week. This one is this week. It is Hije. Hije, thank you so much for your support.
Thank you. And he joined our Discord.
Yes. Thank you for coming to our Discord and sharing.
I was going to reveal at this moment to get your more real reaction. But he's actually my high school friend.
What? Jun, I'm good at pretending.
Okay.
You don't have to say that. I would have reacted in kind.
He's my high school friend.
Wait, from Daejeon, Daegu.
For Daegu. From Daegu. Yeah.
Okay.
Like we go back, from 2001, so 23 years.
What's the term for home childhood friend? There's a term like
불알 친구?
부랄? What's hometown?
고향?
고향. Isn't it 고향 친구? No.
고향 친구, yeah, it's just literally means hometown friend.
Okay. Yeah.
불알 친구 is like your childhood friend.
Childhood friend.
You know what 불알 means?
부라?
불알.
Bral?
Your testicle friends.
Wait, what? The term for childhood friends in Korean is literally translated testicle friends?
Yeah.
That... What?
I think
it makes sense, like two peas in a pod, but
no. I think it's because in your your childhood,
yeah,
you play with like your
each other's
off.
testicles.
not with each other's testicles, but like without with your pants with your pants.
You play
off.
naked?
Yeah, when you're like that little.
No, it has to mean more like two testicles and a scrotum, right? Come on.
No, I don't think so.
Really? The reference is to like playing naked with each other?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. Let me search. That's what I always thought.
I mean, I was gonna say it's like two testicles in a scrotum, two peas in a pod. Like, which one's more?
Oh, it says like it's not clear.
Uh-huh.
There are a lot of interpretations, and one of the interpretations is yours, but the others is mine.
Jun, okay, what is it with Korea? At least like in the old days, Koreans love taking photos of naked babies.
They do?
I feel like more.
Oh
than
yeah, because in
Americans.
the piggy.
Dude, I have so many pictures of a kid. I'm just naked.
Is it only for sons though? Are you proud of like the
Interesting. Oh, the sunness.
right? Because I've never seen a daughter's naked photo.
That's true.
I think it's like it's like sort of like a trophy picture.
We're showing off that we have a son. Okay, I do think that might be uniquely Korean though. Okay.
Anyways, thank you, Ije,
for being our subscriber and Jun's testicle friend.
High school friends aren't testicle friends though.
Oh, you would not refer to him as your testicle friend.
Yeah, hometown friend.
고양 친구, 고양이 친구. Wait, isn't 고양 cat too? Same word?
No, 고양 and 고향.
Okay. Understood.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Again, if you want to be shouted out, please consider supporting us on Patreon. It means a lot.
Yes.
Otherwise, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
See you next week.
See you next week. Bye. They created a merger company called Line Yahoo,
Okay.
and which is owned by a holdings company called A Holdings. And A Holdings was owned.
A Holdings. Come on. That's such a
I don't know
name.
why it's called A Holdings.
Sorry.
Oh, A Holdings.
A-hole.
Okay. A Holdings